The ocean holds millions of stories. The ocean, yeah, it's sitting there covering like 71% of the planet, just sprawling around like it owns the place. And there's this one spot out there, way out there, so stupidly far from anything that astronauts in orbit are actually closer to dry land than that point is, which is, yeah, that's comforting. And despite all our, flashy gadgets and cutting edge tech, quote unquote cutting edge, trying to explore the ocean is still basically a nightmare. Like, we can send robots to Mars, but ask us to look under some water and suddenly the whole species just folds. And because of all that, yeah, we've basically only mapped like 5% of the ocean, which means the other 95% is just sitting there, being all mysterious and ominous for no reason. So you've got, rumors about sunken cities from ancient civilizations, weird lost tech that honestly feels like someone skipped a few chapters in the history books, and those anomalies lurking down in the trenches where sunlight just gave up. And in this video, I've pulled together the strangest, most why does this exist discoveries humans have ever stumbled into out there, plus a few stories about the unlucky people who actually had to deal with them. So, yeah. Buckle up. Plesio or not? The trawler mystery. 1977, near New Zealand. A Japanese trawler is just minding its business, scooping up fish, doing fish-related activities, right? And then they drag up this thing. This massive, gross, half-rotted carcass that looks suspiciously like a plesiosaur. Those long-necked prehistoric dudes that were supposed to have peaced out like 70 million years ago? Yeah. Imagine you're expecting tuna, and instead you get a potential dinosaur corpse. Just another normal day on planet Earth. So the sailors freak out, as one does, and report the whole, hey, we just caught a maybe dinosaur situation. The experts show up, take one look, and they're like, oh, relax, it's just a giant shark. They rot funny. Super reassuring stuff. But then they actually start poking at it, and the mystery doesn't get less weird. If anything, it gets worse. Because the more they looked, the less it behaved like a shark, and the more everyone had to admit, okay, yeah, this is something else. Love that for them. And here's where things get extra uncomfortable. The thing had this tiny little head stuck on a long, noodly neck, plus these big, sweeping fins, basically ticking every single, yep, that's a plesiosaur box like it was doing a speed run. But despite the uncanny resemblance to a creature that should not exist anymore, the official verdict was a globster. Yeah, that's the actual term, a globster, which is scientists speak for, we have no idea what this is, it's super gross, and we're not committing to a dinosaur sighting today. Very professional. So in this case, yeah, the globster turned out to be a giant shark. Classic. The ocean's equivalent of, it was just the wind, except it smells worse. But here's the fun part. This wasn't a one-off. Not even close. There have been tons of these things washed up on shores. Bizarre heaps of meat that look like mutants, or extinct creatures, or like someone just hit randomized species on a character creator. And the second most famous one? Oh, that one takes us all the way back to 1896. Because apparently humanity has been confused and mildly horrified by beach meat for well over a century. So picture this. It's 1896. People are just hanging out on a beach, trying to enjoy their extremely pre-internet lives, and then they stumble upon this enormous thing washed ashore. A huge pale mass, all lumpy and miserable looking. Naturally, everyone goes, ah yes, of course, a giant octopus. Obviously, because what else do you assume when you find a 6-ton blob of nightmare jello? But yeah, no. After someone brave enough decided to poke it, they figured out it was literally just whale fat and collagen. That's it. No eldritch sea monster, just like ocean leftovers. And here's the really fun part. When these bodies rot, all the stuff that makes them look like an actual animal, eyes, teeth, structure, dignity, just melts away. You're left with these shapeless horror masses that have been confusing and scaring the hell out of people for generations. The ocean, undefeated in the category of stuff you wish you hadn't seen. You've got to remember, For literally thousands of years, millions of people have gone out onto the ocean. Some of them came back with these wild, unforgettable, "you're not gonna believe this" stories. Others, they vanished, but later showed up alive somehow, like they just respawned after a lag spike. And then there's the last group, the ones who don't come back at all, just gone, erased by thousands of kilometers of open water, where the closest thing to land is the ocean floor, which is honestly the most disrespectful place to disappear into, if you think about it. The story of Stephen Callahan. January 1982. Stephen Callahan, an American yachtsman with, apparently, way more confidence than I will ever possess, decides to sail solo from the Canary Islands across the entire Atlantic in a tiny yacht by himself for fun. Sure. About a week in, the ocean's like, yeah, no, we're not doing that, and he hits this massive storm. And then, because the universe has a sense of humor, he probably collides with a whale. Imagine being the whale in that situation, just minding your business and suddenly you're in a nautical hit and run. Anyway, the hull cracks, water rushes in, and the yacht starts sinking fast. Stephen, running on pure adrenaline and survival instinct, manages to grab whatever he can: food rations, some maps, a couple of harpoons, water, a flashlight, basically the starter kit for Please Don't Die, Ocean Edition. And he bails onto an inflatable raft, drifting out into the Atlantic with nothing but supplies, hope, and a rapidly declining sense of security. So Stephen ends up drifting across the open ocean for 76 days. Yeah, 76 days. Which is, you know, about 75 and a half days longer than I would have lasted. He survives by catching fish and birds, literally luring them in with tiny food scraps like he's running some kind of morbid ocean food truck. And you'd think the worst part would be the hunger, or the sharks casually doing drive-bys under his raft. But no. The thing he said terrified him the most was the unknown, the silence. The endless, pitch-black nights where you can't see more than a meter around you, and the whole ocean feels like it's just watching. Over time, he said he stopped feeling human altogether, like he wasn't a person anymore, just an object, drifting across this infinite stretch of water that didn't care if he lived or died. Honestly, that might be scarier than any monster story. He described it like his identity was just dissolving, like every night was chipping off another piece of who he was. And the nights out there, they're not quiet, they're nothing. No light, no voices, no engine hum, just the wet, repetitive slurping of water against the raft, which is honestly the most cursed ASMR imaginable. He wrote, "Night is hell with a view of heaven," and that's such a brutally accurate line it almost hurts. Above him, billions of stars, this ridiculous cosmic light show that makes you feel tiny in a poetic way. An abyss so deep and so black it could swallow you without even burping. A heaven above, a hell below, and he's just stuck between them, trying not to fall apart. On day 76, when most people would have already merged spiritually with the raft, Stephen finally spots the faint lights of Guadalupe Island. And the next day, some fishermen find him, probably wondering how this sunburnt cryptid crawled out of the ocean still breathing. But here's the part that really sticks with you. Stephen later admitted that every single night, he felt like something was following him. Not like eyes in the dark, nothing that obvious. More like the water itself was alive, aware, watching him drift across its surface like a bug on a plate. And honestly, if I felt the entire ocean paying attention to me, I'd just evaporate out of pure fear. The disappearance of Tom and Eileen Lonergan. Alright, jump to January 1998, because the ocean apparently wasn't done traumatizing people. This time, it's about Tom and Eileen Lonergan, a pair of American tourists who were, like, very experienced divers. Not amateurs, not I watched a YouTube tutorial once divers. Actual trained people. They joined this group of 26 for a nice, chill excursion near St. Crispin Reef. Weather, perfect. Water, crystal clear. Vibes, completely normal. Which, in hindsight, is always a red flag. Because that's exactly when things tend to go horribly wrong. So the group finishes their dive, surfaces, everyone's chatting, probably showing off their underwater selfies, and then Tom and Eileen come up last, and surprise, the boat's gone. Just vanished. Left them alone in open water like some tragic metaphor. Because nothing says relaxing dive like realizing your entire support system has evaporated. No one even notices they're missing until 2 days later when their stuff is found on the boat. Phones, towels, snorkels, all the mundane evidence of a vanished life. And then, naturally, chaos ensues. Helicopters, ships, divers, a full-scale search for 2 humans who, at that point, are basically ghosts. But nothing. Not a trace. The ocean strike. The island of indigenous people, August 2nd, 1981. This cargo ship called the Primrose just straight up yeets itself onto the shores of North Sentinel Island, which, by the way, is basically the final boss of the Andaman Archipelago. And here's the fun part. This island is home to a literal Stone Age tribe. Like 60,000 years of no thanks, we're good. They don't do visitors, they don't do handshakes, they don't do, hey guys, we come in peace. They're completely cut off from civilization and clearly prefer it that way. And the population? Yeah, your guess is as good as mine. Estimates range anywhere from like 15 people to 100. Because, shockingly, it's kinda hard to get an accurate census when the locals greet drones and researchers with arrows. So yeah, a whole ship washing up there? Absolutely the worst possible location on planet Earth. So, fun fact, people have tried to make contact with the Sentinels. And every single time, it's gone about as well as you'd expect when you walk into someone's house uninvited after 60,000 years. The first attempt was way back in 1880. Some British officer slash researcher shows up like, hello indigenous peoples, I'm here to study you. That went about as great as colonial science usually does. Fast forward almost 100 years. 1967. The Indian government's like, okay, round 2, let's do this properly. Spoiler, they also failed. Shocking, I know. It wasn't until the early 90s that something kind of unusual happened. The Sentinels actually let an Indian crew get close. Like, close. Unarmed tribesmen even walked out to meet them. No arrows, no yelling, just cautious curiosity. Researchers literally waded into the water, holding coconuts over their heads like peace offerings, handing them straight to the islanders. And for a minute there, it looked like maybe humans could actually communicate without immediately trying to kill each other. But yeah, that little moment of peace, it did not last. A few minutes in, the islanders start switching up the vibe. Hard. They go from curious neighbors to leave now in like record time. And then the warning shots start. Arrows, but with no tips. Which is basically their way of saying, we could hurt you, we're choosing not to. Yet. And honestly, that was probably the first and the last time anyone ever got that close without ending up as a cautionary tale. By 1995, India looked at the situation, looked at the history, looked at the islanders' very clear go away messaging, and finally said, yeah, okay, that's enough. Nobody goes there anymore. Officially shutting down all visits to the island. However, fast forward to 2018, and an American traveler named John Allen Chow decides he's going to be the one to make friends with the most isolated tribe on Earth. Because apparently every few decades, someone looks at North Sentinel Island and goes, yeah, I can fix them. So he bribes a group of local fishermen, who, by the way, absolutely know better, to sneak him close to the island, which is already a fantastic sign. Anytime you have to bribe someone to take you somewhere, that's the universe trying to speed run a warning. So he shows up, makes first contact, and according to his own diary, it's a mixed bag. Some islanders are like, huh, what's this guy's deal? Others are, noticeably less thrilled and start acting aggressively. Chow retreats back to the fishermen, who are waiting at what they consider a safe distance, which should also tell you everything, and he starts writing everything down. Then he hands over his diary, tells them who to give it to, like he's updating his last will and testament, and gears up for round 2. Spoiler, this is the part of the story where every rational person would have gone home. The next morning, yeah, the fishermen stay way out in the distance because they value being alive, and they see the islanders walking along the beach carrying something, and then they watch as the sentinels bury Chow's body right there in the sand. No rescue, no recovery. That was it. To this day, Nobody's been able to bring his remains back, and honestly, nobody's trying very hard, because the islanders still do what they've always done. They stay isolated, and they attack anyone who even thinks about getting too close. North Sentinel Island, undefeated, uncontacted, and extremely uninterested in visitors. Civilizations before us. Alright, so we all know the ocean is basically a giant graveyard for ancient cities. Like, a ridiculous number of them are just chilling down there, built thousands of years ago, quietly invalidating every history textbook we grew up with. But there are a few places that don't just raise questions. They raise way too many questions. And one of the biggest offenders is Atlit Yam, easily one of the most mysterious underwater settlements on the planet. Its discovery didn't just surprise archaeologists, it stunned them. Because Atlit Yam doesn't politely fit into our neat little timeline of here's when humans were supposed to know things. Nope. It basically walked in, flipped the table, and said, try again. So Atlit Yam, yeah, this underwater city is basically a time machine. A peek into a period when humans were just figuring out, hey, maybe we should build stuff and not just wander around naked. It was discovered in 1984 off the coast of Israel, chilling in the Mediterranean at about 12 meters deep. So not super deep, but deep enough to make you feel tiny. The settlement dates back to roughly 6,900 BC and apparently existed for around 1,000 years before, well, the ocean was like, nope, and claimed it. And underwater, researchers found the usual archaeological chaos. Stone foundations of buildings, wells, streets, even remains of domesticated animals. Oh, and cemeteries, because why not? 65 burials just hanging out under the sea. Honestly, it's like someone hit flood on a perfectly functional ancient town. And here's where it gets really weird. The mystery of Atlit Yam isn't just that it's underwater, it's that it shouldn't exist at all. According to your standard boring history books, humans back then were living in tiny tribal communities, squatting in simple huts, probably arguing about who got the best spear. Architectural capabilities? Minimal, stone circles at best. But Atlit Yam? Nope. Full-blown settlement, streets, wells, structured buildings, basically a we have our life together starter kit from 6,900 BC. And the kicker? It's not even the only one. There are other underwater finds out there that scream, yeah, your timeline is broken. Okay, ancient technologies. Alright, strap in, because 1901, Greek island of Antikythera. Some sponge divers are just doing their thing, exploring the ocean floor, when they stumble onto a sunken Roman ship. Pretty standard treasure hunting fare, right? Among the usual haul, statues, bronze bits, all that antique junk, they spot a lump covered in corrosion. Their first thought? Probably just a rock. Classic mistake. Happens to the best of us. But then archaeologists get a closer look and notice tiny gears, like real actual gears. And suddenly, everyone realizes they've just found something extraordinary. This isn't just a trinket, it's a mechanical device, precision gears, finely tuned, designed to predict astronomical events. We're talking the movement of the sun, eclipses, phases of the moon, even the dates of the ancient Greek Olympic Games. Basically, someone built a 2,000-year-old analog computer and threw it in the sea. Okay, let's really appreciate how ridiculous this is. Essentially, what they found was a mechanical computer in the 2nd century BC. Yeah, a computer, in bronze, underwater. This thing calculated complex astronomical cycles just by manually turning it. Rotate a gear, get the sun, moon, eclipses, Olympic Games, the works. Experts think it was built between 150 and 100 BC, probably by Archimedes' school or some other ancient Greek engineering prodigies. And by engineering prodigies, I mean humans who were like way ahead of their time. The device was so insanely complex that no one built anything comparable again until the 14th, 15th centuries, 1,400 years later. Modern researchers were floored. Miniature precision gears predicting cycles decades, centuries in advance. Basically the ancient version of checking your digital calendar to see what day your birthday falls on in 2085. One researcher literally called it a technology that escaped from its time. And he's not wrong. This thing belongs in the 16th to 18th centuries, not ancient Greece. It's like finding a Ferrari in a Roman chariot stable. The sunken UFO. Alright, so the Baltic anomaly. Everyone's forgotten about it, moved on to TikTok dances or whatever, but somehow it's still sitting there, quietly making scientists sweat. It was discovered in 2011 at the bottom of the Baltic Sea. And of course, the moment it popped up, ufologists were like, yep, that's a UFO. Scientists, being slightly more cautious, called it the Baltic anomaly. Same thing, just fancier words. And honestly, looking at the photos, it's hard to believe this is just some rock the sea spat out. Researchers immediately said, seawater cannot create something like this. And yeah, I mean, looking at it, I kind of have to agree. It doesn't exactly scream glacial deposit. It's geometric, structured, weirdly smooth. Definitely not your average underwater boulder. So, while everyone else moved on, the Baltic anomaly keeps sitting there, silently reminding us that the ocean has, apparently, a sense of humor, and possibly a really messed up taste in architecture. So the moment those photos hit the internet, yeah, the global press just exploded. Alternative history people were like, oh cool, Atlantis DLC just dropped. Ufologists, obviously, went straight to, yep, alien ship, case closed. And historians, they started digging through like every weird Nazi project from the 1940s, going, maybe they built whatever this is? It was a whole circus, all from a couple of blurry underwater photos. Alright, here's where it gets kind of infuriating. Divers pulled up samples from the Baltic anomaly, and chemical analysis shows most of it is just ordinary basalt, rock, nothing weird. Classic. But wait, a small portion of the samples contained a metal alloy not found in nature. Yeah, naturally occurring rocks plus alienish metal, because why make it simple? So basically, the analysis answered exactly nothing. Ufologists, historians, curious nerds, they all kept spinning theories like hamsters on a wheel, none of them really landing. One of the more plausible ideas is that it's just a natural formation, and the strange metal, maybe a meteorite chipped off and decided to chill down there. But honestly, nobody knows. Not really. The Baltic anomaly remains unsolved, silent, mysterious, and as always, extremely smug about it. The empty zones of the ocean. Okay, let's talk about the ocean for a second. When most of us picture it, we imagine, like, immediately, sharks circling, schools of fish everywhere, whales breaching, and some eldritch horror lurking just out of sight. Basically a vast, terrifying void that wants to eat you, especially the deep parts, where the darkness feels infinite. But here's the thing, that image, totally, almost entirely a human invention. Movies, myths, stories, we just stacked all the creepy stuff together and called it the ocean. Reality, much less dramatic. Most of the ocean is empty, like really empty. Vast stretches of water with nothing going on. No circling sharks, no monster tentacles, just water, quietly judging you. So yeah, your nightmares about the deep sea, mostly just caffeine-fueled imagination. Alright, before you start picturing an entirely lifeless wasteland, let's clarify. There is life out there, just not much in the open ocean. You could drift for hundreds, even thousands of kilometers, and not see a single fish. Not one. Nada. Scientists say most of the world's oceans are just huge, empty expanses where big marine life is basically a rare sighting, like spotting Bigfoot, but wetter. Almost all fish, whales, and other charismatic ocean critters stick to the upper layers of water or coastal areas, coral reefs, bays, shallow zones. But those lively spots, they're tiny compared to the sheer volume of the oceans. So yeah, the majority of the ocean is like vast, quiet, and surprisingly lonely, far from the cinematic Sharknado you were expecting. It's mostly just water, and a lot of it. And here's the kicker, the truly unsettling part. We have no idea what this so-called emptiness might actually be hiding. It looks empty, harmless, calm, but the ocean is masterful at playing peekaboo with reality. Just because you don't see something doesn't mean it's not there, waiting. The deep sea doesn't have to show itself to be terrifying. Sometimes the unknown lurking in the void is enough. That's the part that keeps oceanographers up at night, and frankly, me too. Alright, that's it for today. If you enjoyed watching me ramble about mysterious underwater stuff, do the usual, like, subscribe, hit that bell, make the algorithm